So it appears that things are indeed really about to start picking up in NBA free agency this offseason, as it looks like Carmelo Anthony has finally come to a decision, and that decision is that home is where the heart is, and that's where the most money is, and he is going to re-sign with the New York Knicks. If I had to guess, the teams that were most likely in the closest consideration for Carmelo Anthony outside of the New York Knicks were probably the Los Angeles Lakers, the Chicago Bulls, and maybe outside on the periphery a little bit, the Houston Rockets. And when you look at this, you could sit there and say, well, if he goes to Houston, they're definitely a title contender, maybe. This is a Houston team that did lose in the first round of the playoffs with Harden and Howard, and there has to be some real concerns about how he would mesh with those two big egos and ball hogs down there in Houston. And then you talk about L.A., well, going to play with Kobe Bryant. Who says Kobe Bryant is anywhere near the player he was a couple of years ago coming off of these major injuries? And what other type of infrastructure is there around him? So if he really wants to go chase a title, is L.A. really the best place for him? And Chicago, more of the same thing. This is a team, well, if Derrick Rose comes back healthy, well, that's a big damn if. He's basically missed the past 2 seasons, and in order to give Carmelo Anthony anything close to a big-time contract that he would want in free agency, the Bulls would have to splice off pieces from a team that lost in the first round of the playoffs. So maybe when all was said and done, the best option for Carmelo Anthony maybe was indeed the New York Knicks. And I have no doubt in my mind that a dominant force, if not the predominant force in guiding Carmelo Anthony's decision-making is the fact that the money was better coming from the Knicks organization. And it was. I mean, if he would have went, let's say, to the Lakers, he would have sacrificed a guaranteed year and a total of over $30 million compared to what he could have gotten by re-signing with the Knicks. If he goes to the Bulls, you're talking about sacrificing a year and as much as up to $60 million in order to make that work. You know, again, that's a lot of money. And I know a lot of people are going to use this as an excuse to advance an anti-Carmelo propaganda machine, sitting there and knocking him and saying he's not really committed to winning a championship and he doesn't care about winning. He's about getting his shots and getting his money. Well, ding dong, dumb dicks. That's the name of the game. I know as fans, we love to sit there and live in this fantasy world where all these players always want to win championships and they would play it for nothing because they love the game. Well, if they would play it for nothing, why don't they play it for nothing? Because it's a profession. It is called professional basketball, you stupid idiots. That means it is a business where the owners are trying to get as much juice as they possibly can for themselves, and as a result, there's nothing wrong with the players being able to get as much money for their hashtag ass pockets as they could possibly muster. And I think we're sitting here and going to use this, and you know some people are, use this as a knock against Carmelo Anthony. Who's to say that going to the Lakers and sacrificing over $30 million brings him a championship anyways? Who's to say that sacrificing that much money and going to the Houston Rockets brings him an NBA championship anyways? Who's to sit there and say that going to the Bulls and sacrificing potentially $60 million is going to bring him a championship anyways? It's a lot easier for us on the outside looking in to sit there and pass judgment. Would you give up $60 million for the opportunity to win something that might actually never happen, knowing damn good and well if you don't win that title, not only do you not win that title, you cost yourself a shit ton of money. And at the end of the day, Carmelo Anthony has worked hard his entire life to put himself in a position where he can make as much money for his skills as somebody deems it's worth. And as a result, if the Knicks are willing to pay him almost $30 million per season, that is what he's worked hard for. That's what he's worked his whole life for. That's what he is working for now, is to provide for himself and his family, to make sure that when he's done playing basketball, if he doesn't want to do another fucking thing a day in his life, he doesn't have to, because he has earned that right. Who are we to sit there and begrudge him for this? And to the people that are going to sit there and say Carmelo doesn't care about winning and Carmelo isn't motivated by winning a championship. Well, number one, did you ever think that maybe he did the smart thing in re-signing with the Knicks, saying I can get my money and maybe at some point in time I could always get traded later? But that money is only going to come from the Knicks right here or right now, and I need to do what's best for me and my family and get the most that I possibly can, because God knows the owners, if they had an opportunity, would cut me every chance that they possibly could. Also look at it this way. The Knicks don't look that appealing on paper right now, and they've been a disaster of an organization for over a decade and a half. But when you look at this Knicks organization, maybe Carmelo does buy into Phil Jackson. Maybe he does believe in Phil Jackson. Maybe he feels that he can play under head coach Derek Fisher. Maybe he looks at the fact that 6 or 7 contracts are going to come off the books after this upcoming season, including the albatross contracts of people like Andrea Bargnani and Amari Stoudemire, knowing that next year's free agent class isn't terrible. Guys like Kevin Love and Rajon Rondo and others are going to be out there on the market, and the Knicks are going to have some wiggle room. They have, some young players in the mix, guys like Tim Hardaway Jr. and Clay Anthony Early. Maybe things aren't that bad for the Knicks long term. Because even if Anthony would have went to the Rockets or the Lakers or the Bulls, let's be perfectly realistic, he probably wasn't winning an NBA championship this upcoming season anyways. So why not stay where you could make even more money, and a lot more money at that? Stay where you love the environment. You love the city that you're playing in. You love potentially the guy in charge in Phil Jackson. You love playing in Madison Square Garden. You could be one of the biggest stars in the league and the biggest media market in the league, which, again, I think is very important, and that's why it's such a good thing that Carmelo Anthony is staying his ass in New York, knowing that in another year things could shape up in a big hurry, and you could be sitting there with some of these other young talents that maybe get a chance to play this year, and you bring in a Kevin Love and or Rajon Rondo, and all of a sudden the New York Knicks are really cooking again.